Honorable members, at the break, we were debating a compendium of bills. I presume that we are now ready. I think Sanans had the floor. Make sure his clock reflects that good 30 minutes that we're going to give him.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. Madam Speaker, I rise on my feet today to debate the compendium of bills, the International Commercial Arbitration Bill, as well as the Arbitration Amendment Bill. I'm also going to give attention to the two great men in our political history that this week would be 93 years of age. The one born today, whose anniversary we're celebrating, or many people are honoring, is the late Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinling, born on the 22nd of March of 1930. And the gentleman that I had wished to give tribute to when we sat on Monday, but we'll take time to do that today, is the late Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield, who was born on the 20th of March, 1930 as well. Two great Bahamian political giants, born 2 days apart, so many years ago. Madam Speaker, before I get into my tributes to Sir Cecil Wallace as well as Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinling, these two bills on the International Commercial Arbitration Bill as well as the Arbitration Amendment Bill of 2023. I heard that there were some claims the last administration was all talk, did nothing. This administration now, this new day, is all about action, and this is a prime example. The truth, Madam Speaker, is that one of the bills is amending a bill from 2009, and Madam Speaker, we can work the administrations back. 2009 would have been under an F&M administration. And this administration hasn't gotten it so much better. They've actually not repealed the 2009 arbitration bill, Madam Speaker. They haven't recognized the great work of that 2009 administration, F&M administration, by creating this industry for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. But they touted this International Commercial Arbitration Bill as being almost the cat's meow, Madam Speaker, something that nobody else could have done. But when you look at Section 4 of this bill, Madam Speaker, it says, in the interpretation of this act, regard is to be had to its international origin under the UNCITRAL model law of international commercial arbitration and the need to promote uniformity in its application and the observance of good faith. I call this piece of legislation, this type of legislation, an off-the-shelf piece of legislation. It's either off the shelf because a former government had begun to draft it, maybe an F&M administration. In this case, it's an off-the-shelf piece of legislation because it's come from our global family, to put it politely, under the United Nations. So there isn't much that has been done by this piece of legislation coming to existence in the Commonwealth of Bahamas that is that transformative. I just want to put it into perspective, Madam Speaker, and I'll leave it there. I think I've given some contribution to balancing the excitement of this current administration and its efforts to downplay the actions of past F&M administrations. Madam Speaker, the biggest concern that I have for the arbitration industry, as well as any financial services industry, is that we're acting to make this a safe business space for the entire region. I know that those words were said earlier by another member. So in making this a safe business space for the entire region. We have to be honest with our actions. It's not just about passing new legislation to meet international standards, but it's looking at how this arbitration, this commercial, this financial service industry is portrayed in the public. And right now you have a jurisdiction that could very well be and may be the safe business space for the entire region, but it's currently on an EU blacklist, Madam Speaker. So we have to get past that blacklist status. I know that our Prime Minister has spoken in the United Nations with certain opinions on why it's happening so frequently to the Bahamas, but once we get past the blacklisting, which I understand the Attorney General is aiming to accomplish on behalf of the country in the month of October of this year, once we get past the EU blacklist, we have to stay ahead of these regulators, because if we really want to make international commercial arbitration a industry and the Bahamas a destination in that industry, we have to make sure that our record remains clean, whether fairly or unfairly, that it's clean at all times. There are also some comments that have, I think, been in the press yesterday where words like all asset transfers to are avoidable, actual or constructive frauds. So there's something that we're not allowed to talk about in the House of Assembly now, and I know that we've been doing well to combat them. I think the country may have even retained international media consultants as well as international law firms. But outside of passing legislation, we have to make sure that our record is clean on all levels. And together, for the greater good of the community, we have to ensure that we work together, whichever administration it is, to stay ahead as quickly as possible. Madam Speaker, I'm going to begin my tribute, and what I'm going to do for Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield is, I've not done it before, but his famous speech at the Progressive Liberal Party Convention in October of 1970 was titled "Free at Last." And I'm going to read that speech now, Madam Speaker, and I hope you will take a break every once in a while just to remind members of the public that I'm reading Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield's speech when he was a member of the Progressive Liberal Party. And there isn't a soundbite that circulates where I'm talking about certain things from this speech that might sound as though I'm talking of the PLP party as if it was my party. These are Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield's words, and this is a tribute to him as he is celebrating he would be celebrating his 93rd birthday this week, having it come on Monday. Speech by Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield, Progressive Liberal Party Convention, October of 1970. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Session Chairman, Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers, Representatives of the People, Honorable Senators, fellow delegates, my brothers and sisters. Democracy implies the freedom to think, to dissent, and to bring about change in a lawful manner in the interest of all. It is flexible, responsive form of government, difficult to describe in fixed terms. Democracy does not arise as a result of imposed or structured political practices, but as a dynamic, liberating force nurtured by the people themselves. It can thrive and flourish only when its citizens are free to search continually for new ideas, models, and theories to replace outmoded knowledge in an effort to sever an ever-increasing populist tomorrow. These words were penned by another, but have relevance in our country, in our party, and even here at our convention, 1970 PLP convention. We are the adults, the generation, the new Bahamian to whom the electorate, the people of the Bahamas, have entrusted the keys to their future. We are the Progressive Liberal Party in whom our people placed their confidence for 5 years to produce justice for them. The objectives we set out to achieve are contained in the Progressive Liberal Party's plan for progress and prosperity. Before I go any further, there are some people who need to know a few facts about me. And tonight, as I look out on this large audience of friends, my mind flashes back to 1955. 15 years ago, this would be 15 years prior to 1970. 15 years ago, when the PLP was a fledgling party with few voices crying and desperately pleading to our people to remove the scales from their eyes and to take courage and fight the evils which pervaded our land. I remember how, as a 25-year-old customs officer, not a big-time lawyer, I was a young man interested in the future of my country, and particularly in the kind and quality of life that lay ahead of my then 3-year-old son and other child my wife was then carrying. I had the responsibilities of family and a good, secure job. Just like a lot of other people, however, my country called, my party sounded, and I responded. I gave up my job and joined the valiant forces of the PLP, which such men as Lyndon Pindling, Randall Folks, H.M. Taylor, Lochinvar Lockhart, Cyril Stevenson, Clarence Bain, Milo Butler, C.A. Dorset, Raleigh Butler, Arthur Hanner, Henry Bowen, Sammy Isaacs, Leon McKinney, Joe Butler, and Loftus Roker. Mr. Roker was prosecuted in the interests of his party for not being age 21. It angers me when I see some so-called PLPs taking shots at this young giant. When there were no men to hold the banner for this party, this young man of 20 years put up his age to 21 in order to be nominated and serve the party. I contested the seat in Eleuthera in 1956 and lost by about 50 votes. In 1962, I was in Eleuthera again, joined this time by Preston Albury and Doris Johnson. The party had also then attracted to its ranks of candidates Orville Turnquest, Spurgeon Bethel, Paul Adderley, John Cavill, Oscar Johnson, Holland Smith, and L.B. Johnson, as well as Warren Labarity, Arthur Folks, and Anthony Roberts. Some stayed, some went, but all contributed by those early efforts to the ultimate defeat of the UBP in 1967. There were many others, too, who at the time threw their all into the Progressive Liberal Party. Each of us old-timers were victimized, cussed, shunned, and avoided in some quarters, hated, made fun of, and reviled, because we dared to say what we believed. We few kept faith with our beliefs and worked with this unquenchable enthusiasm and conviction that one day the scales would fall off eyes. Bahamians would wake up to the strength of democracy, to their inalienable right to leaders of their own natural choice, dedicated to the interests, and that we would eventually proudly walk into the dawn of a new enlightenment. There are brothers and sisters in this convention hall and brothers and sisters elsewhere who will remember the many, many meetings, the long hours, the disagreements, the disappointments, the frustrations, the joys, the bonds of brotherhood, of putting our heads together in love, in friendship, and in mutual respect, in solving problems, deciding courses to liberate our people from the charismatic bondage of the UBP. But, Mr. Chairman, should we now bury all those valiant heroes who braved the noonday sun and who bore the heat and burden of the day which led to our emergence from virtual slavery? Do you, brothers and sisters, believe that we can or that we should? Is the strength of our party not firmly rooted in the past, in its early struggles and its eventual success, and particularly in the brotherhood and understanding and courage of all those outstanding Bahamians who willingly risked all for their people and their principles? Brothers and sisters, should their role, and consequently the role of all of you who supported them, be oblivion? Was their service to the party and to the Commonwealth insignificant, or should their dedication and wisdom and fortitude and humanity and vision not remain as a permanent source of inspiration to us in the future? in the trials and tribulations which face any and every nation. May we belittle others' people's contributions, but the real test is an evaluation of our own. My brother, I say that each one of you should examine his conscience to consider whether his actions have been constructive or destructive. Mr. Chairman, I claim the indulgence of this convention to return to a more personal note. These are the words of Successor Wallace Whitfield. In November 1964, I became chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party. While in that office, it was scathingly said that I didn't work, that I was a paper general. I took this all in my stride and in good faith. Yet on January 10th, 1967, I was the chairman who had been directing the election campaign, which led to a PLP government being created for the first time in the history of the Bahama Islands. A people was free. Cowbells were ringing, goatskin drums were beating, and a spontaneous gaiety gripped the country. The nation's soul was dancing. I, Mr. Chairman, had done my part. I had performed for my people, but I knew that this was not the end, but merely the beginning of a new opportunity for further service and a massive responsibility for those to be chosen to be your government. The elected representatives of the people came together in the PLP conclave and handed me the portfolio of Minister of Works. And to the ordinary responsibilities of that portfolio were added town planning, road traffic, out-island electricity, and relations with the Bahamas Electricity Corporation. I was aware that we were a new, untried government of ministers, and our people to whom we had promised much will be looking at us with pride in their accomplishments, as well as with confident expectation of the results we would produce for them. Mr. Chairman, I am proud to say, for my part, I was able to win the confidence of my official colleagues and to weld them into an impressive team, which became the pride and envy of all. Every road, street, nook, and lane was paved. Just about every street got running water and public faucets. And over the hill, which used to be in darkness at night, was provided with light. I remember staying on the floor of the House of Assembly in this connection, where once the people walked in darkness, they now walk in light. Major roads were built in Andros and Grand Bahama for Warren Laverty, the Minister of Out-Island Affairs, and before I left, we drew up a program of major out-island road construction to be undertaken in 3 out-islands each year, beginning with Cat Islands, Acklands, and Crooked Island, and Abaco. The ministry successfully tackled an impressive building program, and the foundation was laid for the expansion of the New Providence water supply. An imaginative start was made with expanding and improving public parks and providing proper and attractive playground facilities wherever we could find a suitable piece of ground for use by children of New Providence 1970. Who had to use the streets for recreation and relaxation.
PLP did this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
PLP did this.
You said he would sound like a PLP.
The town planning, this is the founder of the Free National Movement, for the record.
No. Collective responsibility. PLP did this. Talk to Mr. Marcos.
Collective what?
Talk to Marcos City with collective.
Collective marbles.
We had a.
Your wing of the party got involved with collective responsibility.
Y'all collecting marbles over there.
Y'all are dissenters.
The town planning department was given an infusion of new life and purpose and roused to realize that their prime purpose was service to the public. The road traffic department was reorganized. Perhaps most important were the trips I made to the outer islands with the representatives of the people and my professional officers to make contact with the people and local boards of works in order to get to know their problems and needs. After the 1968 general elections, I was moved to the Ministry of Education, Engliston, and in 1969, responsibility for cultural affairs was added to my portfolio. This is where I now actively and heavily engaged in the people's business. I very quickly realized the really enormous problems of our education system, that it was completely out of date and not adjusted to the present and future needs of the Bahamas, especially in its new role under the PLP government. The children from our primary schools were being produced without basic skills and were therefore scarcely able to take advantage of the facilities in our secondary schools. The curricula were antiquated and too strongly academic-based, biased, and children were becoming frustrated in our secondary schools, which offered little training in trade and vocational skills. Our schools were suffering under the dead weight of too many unqualified teachers. There were, in too many cases, old and dilapidated buildings, quite unsuitable for use as schools. They were poorly equipped. The ministry itself was inadequately staffed, both administratively and professionally. Nevertheless, I again succeeded in awakening the enthusiasm of my staff and welding them into a keen, tireless team, which has worked day and too often at night to improve the educational system. With the struggle, I was able to get finance to open a much-needed second teacher training college at San Salvador and to establish the Nassau Technical Center in Nassau, which is providing urgently needed training never before provided to equip our children for a place in our society and economy. A large new secondary school, now known as Highbury High School, has been established. Extensions have been made to 3 secondary schools in New Providence, and more planned, which will enable us to give not only more accommodation, but depth and variety to secondary education. 2 new primary schools are now being built on Kemp Road and Wolf Road. Central secondary vocational schools are being planned in the Out Islands with the enthusiastic cooperation of the representatives of the people to ensure that Out Islands have proper educational opportunities in their own regions. I could go on with a long catalog of what has been accomplished and planned by the Ministry of Education and Culture, but I will content myself with mentioning only scholarships, schools, libraries, sports center development, future of the University of the West Indies, planning for the College of the Bahamas, drama festival, and so on ad infinitum. The Ministry of Education and Culture itself has been transformed by reorganization, which has improved its service to its schools, its teachers, and to the public. The administrative reorganization has paid handsome dividends. The creation of a curriculum division is beginning to infuse new life into the teaching service, which also has responded enthusiastically to vastly increased in-service programs in the summer vacation. The management side has been strengthened to give very much increased support to the teaching staff. The whole Ministry of Education and Culture staff has accepted happily, willingly, and enthusiastically that the real purpose of their existence is service to the school children of the Bahamas. That's three times, Madam Speaker.
It's a part of the cultural component.
All out dissension, all out dissension.
It's a culture. Culture.
The speech remarks of Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield from the 1970 PLP convention continue. Shortly after I became Minister of Education, I decided that since the Bahamas was not then producing sufficient trained teachers, we had to bring them in from abroad. I did not and still do not care what color or race they are, so long as they are fully qualified persons dedicated to teaching knowledge and training our people in skills and the full development of their natural abilities. So long as they can give all my children over all these islands a good, sound education. For my fellow delegates, I have read that the underlying aim of education is to further man's unending search for truth. Once he possesses the means to truth, all else is within his grasp. Wisdom and understanding, sensitivity, compassion, and responsibility, as well as intellectual honesty and personal integrity, will be his guides in adolescence and his companions in maturity. Each of us as parents and as responsible citizens must ensure that all our children are properly educated. I will spare you any further talk on how I have attempted to discharge my responsibilities as a member of the PLP government. I am apt to be carried away by my enthusiasm and my dedication to the service of the people of the Bahamas. I realize that that enthusiasm can and has been misinterpreted, but in humility, I can honestly say that my one ambition is to serve the people of the Bahamas faithfully and well. with the utmost limits of my strength, my skill, and my ability. I have recited something of my history in the service of the party and this government. This is no essay in self-glorification, but a humble, honest, and forthright attempt not only to put the record straight, but also to give an account of my stewardship. My conception of the purpose of a convention may differ from that of others, but let me state it, that it provides an opportunity for the government, that is for ministers in particular, as well as representatives, to give an account of their stewardship, to record their achievements, and to account for their failures to implement the party's platform, to discuss future policy and strategy, to examine critically and the health and soundness of the party, and to affirm and rejuvenate the feeling of fellowship and brotherhood, which is the keystone of the party. Ask yourselves honestly, what issues have been decided at this convention? And ask yourself seriously, what current issues of paramount and vital importance to every one of us has gone by default without proper discussion? Let me give you 3 examples to illustrate my point. This was from his 1970 speech at the PLP convention, Madam Speaker. Firstly,
To get it all in. Speed it up.
Firstly, what guidance has this convention given with respect to the rise in the cost of living? Should we not have discussed measures to meet the increased cost of rent, of food, and of clothing, which affects every family so grievously? The Minister of Finance issued a warning some time ago to house owners about the inflation of house rents, but should we not go further? Secondly, what guidance has the convention given about growing unemployment? I fear that the cheers we have heard in this hall are not being echoed by the unemployed workers of Grand Bahama, or the workers laid off at Coral Harbor, Gramco, Bahamas Airways, and at some hotels. Thirdly, should we not have had some constructive discussion on the question of independence, which had produced so many different reactions throughout the Commonwealth? When the convention fever dies down and when ministers return to their ministries next week, what signposts, what directions has this convention given in respect of the day-to-day operation of matters which affect our lives? Representatives may well justly hold one view, a minister another, and neither may hold the true view of the party. This is the only forum in which every delegate has a voice in shaping his country's destiny. This is the forum to which you can contribute to the shaping of decisions which vitally affect this nation. This is the forum for dissension. This is not a forum for dissension, but discussion of different points of view, each helping to shape a national PLP posture which truly reflects the wishes of this party. Not one man's ideas alone, or 10 men's, but each settlement, each constituency. Without this, there will be disagreements, with each man holding to his position because he believes he is right in his representations of his people's desires. After all, why have representatives or delegates if they cannot be allowed to represent the people in a way they see best? It is not as some see it, I feel, but it is because the National General Convention has not provided the decisions upon which future actions will be based. Statements by delegates should not be regarded as criticism of their government, but merely as expressions of helpfulness to guide representatives and ministers in their actions and works within their constituencies, hence within the nation. We are all adult enough not to bully, but to persuade with reason. Can each of you now return home and explain to your branches, to your people, the issues which face the country today? Will you be able to explain actions taken in the name of the PLP within broad-based policy decisions arrived at here in this convention? This, Mr. Chairman, is how we achieve real unity. The free and full expression of delegates in open, honest dialogue, which will result in real understanding, peace, and love. A real trust that develops when men's thoughts are given freely and voluntarily. Common objectives arrived at through mutual respect for differing opinions. Original thought and initiative unstifled in discussion. It may be to admit our mistakes, but it may be difficult to admit our mistakes, but it may be equally disastrous to brave it out and not come face to face with them. We must, above all things, beware of stagnation. The PLP was formed to serve the people, and the people of their circumstances change. Without political growth, our party will stagnate and die. Does this party have room in it for the questioning youth, or only for a few of the old-timers and hordes of bootlickers and yes-men? Have you considered that those inside and outside this party who wish to play an active, constructive part may be well excluded for fear of ridicule, reprisal, and false accusation, and may well decide to get in the way? As you know well, some of us Bahamians are true men first and cherish the atmosphere of fraternity. But if callously goaded, we'll react sharply and regard some of the recriminations at this convention as challenges to be met. Let no one deceive himself and others that the same valiant spirits that flared up in 1955 and thereafter will not flare up again. Give a man a cause and he will fight, if necessary to the bitter end and all the way. Words alone will not feed my people in St. Agnes nor in other parts of the Commonwealth. I want deeds in the service of my people, not just words. My brothers, it is said that the gods help those who help themselves. When I began, I quoted a passage about democracy implying the freedom to think, to dissent, and to bring about change in a lawful manner in the interest of all. But brothers, are we really thinking at this convention? Does each one of us feel free to dissent without fear of reprisal? Have we applied our minds to bringing about change? And change there must be in all human affairs, not only in lawful manner, but also in the interest of all. I also quoted the passage about man's unending search for truth, and about the fundamental requirements in that search being wisdom, understanding, sensitivity, compassion, responsibility, intellectual honesty, and personal integrity. I asked before we broke for lunch 15 minutes early. Madam Speaker, this is the last page of the speech of the former chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party, the chairman that won the PLP's first election in the Bahama Islands. I'm not sure why any member over there is disrespecting these great words, which are as relevant then as they are today. Madam Speaker, if I could have 2 minutes, please.
Now that's respect.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. How far has each one of us who has contributed to this convention paid even lip service to these qualities? Democracy and truth are hard and demanding taskmasters. But if we do not keep the principles I've quoted constantly before us, we will be in danger of serving not God, but mammon. My brothers, I have searched my soul during this past week as I have followed what has happened at this convention. I have recalled to mind the history of the long and bitter but successful fight for freedom and the founders of the Progressive Liberal Party and those who later joined its ranks. It is with a saddened, heavy heart that I have to confess to you now that my conscience tells me that we have this weekend witnessed the violation of those principles of freedom and democracy and truth, for which you and I and others like us fought so hard, and which we have kept always in the front of our minds in the conduct of our daily affairs. I gladly and willingly accepted burdens for the people of the Bahamas, and particularly for those people of St. Agnes constituency, when I became a member of the House of Assembly. And these I cannot repudiate, no matter how grievous my disillusionment. Nevertheless, my conscience has dictated unequivocally that that should be the limit of my burden. You will remember that the Bible says, "What is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" I have, therefore, at 8 o'clock this evening, delivered to His Excellency the Governor General my resignation as Minister of Education and Culture. Free at last, my soul is dancing. Madam Speaker, those were the words of the great Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield, who this week, members of the Free National Movement are honoring the anniversary of what would be his 93rd birthday. If I had more time, I would also give a good tribute to the late Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinling,
Where the speech is, which speech you can read.
but I'm sure,
Which speech you can read, which one?
but I'm sure, Madam Speaker, that someone on the other side will do that. And I have my book here on Sir Lyndon. I've even got pages tagged from quotes that he said. Madam Speaker, if I could just indulge something.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
This is just a three-line quote from Sir Lyndon, and it's as relevant today as it was when he said it early on before we became an independent nation. What does it take to be a Bahamian? Loyalty to our Bahamas over and above all other. Zeal for our Bahamas unmatched by any other. Concern for other Bahamians above all others. Madam Speaker, I think that any interested young person looking to get in politics or in national governance should take the politics out of the content of the speech by Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield
Good speech.
and the content of the words found in the book by Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinling, The Life and Times of the First Prime Minister of the Bahamas. We are in our 50th year, Madam Speaker, and there will be exciting days that come after this year of celebration. It's our duty, and I implore all of my colleagues, the younger ones in particular, as well as the young future prime ministers and representatives in this honorable house today, to take these great men's words to heart and allow them to be a guide to their conduct, and share these words with others so that we can work as one people, Madam Speaker, united for the betterment of our Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
So now it's an action, so you need two more. You agree that successful show the modern Bahamas.
Thank,
Laid foundation.
What's the question?
thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me first applaud. Let me first applaud the member for St. Anne's for reading the speech of Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield, and also for giving a tribute to Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinling. I believe. But Madam Speaker, I believe and I think he's right that if we took out the politics of it and appreciated two men and appreciated the contribution to our modern political system by those two men, that it is a tremendous accomplishment. Obviously, Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinling, in terms of the visionary behind the modern Bahamas, all of the accomplishments that were made, but also Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield, who, when I first read his speech, that same speech, it was actually one of the things that inspired me to join. Well, first of all, one of the first things that inspired me to become involved in politics. And one of the first things that inspired me to join the Free National Movement. Just the, in a day now where persons run away from and shy from conflict and shy from difficult decisions and shy from having to do things that are difficult. Having a cabinet minister just recently elected in a Bahamas that where the PLP was really not just a political party, but the political party, because at that point, as far as I am aware, was the only political party of significance. And to decide on principle, and whether those on their side agree with the decision or not, I think all of us could appreciate that having to stand on that principle and making a firm decision. Nowadays you send in your letter of resignation. You send it to the press, or you post it on social media. But in the middle of a convention and in the middle of a convention speech, the courage that took to do so, I think is a lesson to all of us to stand on principle. So we commend the minister, the member for St. Anne's, and again, an inspiration to all of us, and both men, an inspiration to all of us. Madam Speaker, I just have a few comments to make, but I did want to comment on and say how much I personally appreciated the visit of the Progressive Liberal Party Women's Association from Grand Bahama. We are all Grand Bahamians.
Yes.
And I came met some of them at the airport this morning and figured that it was a special occasion when we saw so many from the Progressive Liberal Party and these dedicated women. So I applaud them on their visit to Freeport, their visit to Nassau, sorry, and saw a number of East Grand Bahama women as well. And so it was good to see them. Madam Speaker, this bill, or both bills, have been around for some time. And it would sort of just be easier if the other side would just tell the whole story. In terms of this bill was around, I believe, from 2018, 2021. I mean, it most definitely predated this administration. And so it was out for, look, before that, no difficulties in that. I know it was, no, I'm not saying that at all. I said it.
Saying that indirectly.
Madam Speaker, the bill was presented for consultation. Let me be clear. The bill was presented for consultation in 2018. And the bill has gone through, I believe, a number of versions. And now it is being presented here. But I make that statement in response that to give the impression that this administration is the administration that created this bill and is now moving ahead with this bill is not, that would not be an accurate portrayal. And so the point that I am making is And if it predated 2018, then it predated 2018. But it was presented and it was put out for consultation back in 2018. Just a couple of points on the bill, Madam Speaker. My first point would be, and it is not a point in criticism, because again, I believe both sides would have had an opportunity to contribute to this, to the bill. But Section 13 of the International Commercial Arbitration Bill 2023 speaks about appointments of arbiters. And it has a very interesting and thought-provoking clause. 13.1, which speaks about the appointment of arbiters or arbitrators. Sub 1 says, no person shall be precluded by reason of his nationality from acting as an arbitrator unless otherwise agreed by the parties. So in essence, anyone really can come to the Bahamas and can be an arbitrator. And that this bill really speaks to the fact that you cannot deny someone from being an arbitrator because of their nationality. Member for Carmichael, you are right in terms of making the point, and I agree with that point that that clause still does not take away from the fact that someone has to apply for a work permit, and someone still has to meet all of the requirements and so on for a work permit. The point that, and again, just a point for discussion really, is that while we are moving ahead with this as an industry, we also at the same time should be preparing Bahamians to be masters of this industry. And if the legislation and the industry moves ahead faster than the preparation of Bahamians to take on the industry, then we risk being overtaken when it comes to being the masters of this industry. Left behind, absolutely, member for West Grand Bahama. We risk being left behind. And so when we push this, and while I believe all sides believe that this is a positive advancement, it is an industry that we want to advance, it is something that we want to push forward. At the same time, we must also ensure that we prepare Bahamians, properly prepare Bahamians for what is to come. And that if that means when we move this ahead, that at the same time we have an institute for arbitration. At the same time, we encourage, prepare, fund those type institutes to make sure that we make it easier for Bahamians to be advanced in this area. And it's not just being the arbitrators, but it is also being the persons who will represent the parties in the industry as well. And I know that the Bar Association, the Bar Council has particular rules in terms of the practice of lawyers or persons who are coming in when it comes to the practice of lawyers, that if you're going to be called to the bar as an international person, you obviously have to be referred to and have a Bahamian counterpart that is going to put you forward. But what would happen for those, because it's my understanding that you don't necessarily need to be called to the bar to do arbitration. And so if, as a lawyer, you must have a Bahamian counterpart to at least present you to the court, do we want to also think about if an international person comes, that we want to also connect them with a Bahamian counterpart so that when they are connected to the Bahamian counterpart, if there is a transfer of knowledge, then they can also have an opportunity for transfer of knowledge as well. So again, I'm not sure how the wordings of that and how that would go in practice. However, I think we should think about that when a international person comes into the Bahamas to do a particular job, that we also have some form of mandate that would connect them to a Bahamian counterpart that would ensure that if you have a well-known, a well-educated, well-trained, well-experienced arbitrator that comes to the Bahamas, that they will be connected to a Bahamian so that they can transfer that knowledge to the Bahamian. The Bahamian also could, if you have a particular case, a big case, and you have international arbitrators that come, and it would also ensure that Bahamians would have an opportunity to sit at the table to experience those kinds of cases as well. We also would want to somehow protect against or ensure that Bahamians participate in having, because I could envision persons having firms, arbitration firms, where you may have a non-Bahamian that comes and sets up a arbitration firm, and they bring in non-Bahamians and set up shop here in the Bahamas. Because there doesn't seem to be anything in the Arbitration Act that prevents persons coming in and setting up arbitration firms and operating here in the Bahamas. Yes, there is immigration laws that have to occur, but we also want to ensure that even when you have a arbitration, there's nothing in the Arbitration Act that says that if I agree to have 2 Americans or 3 Americans to come in as arbitrators, that there isn't anything that prevents them from coming in.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Just on a point of order, I just want the honorable member to be very clear. Anyone coming on the Bahamas for work, they must abide by the immigration and legislation, the act, and they are required to get a work permit. So whether or not, and you will find any other pieces of legislation, not necessarily just this, as it relates to the medical profession, doctors, nurses, all of the different professions, they have to still comply with the Immigration Act. They must get a work permit. And so that responsibility then still falls on the government as to whether or not to allow these persons in. So some foreign and non-Bahamian cannot come in this country and arbitrarily set up an arbitration company without coming to the immigration department to first of all obtaining a permit. And that will not happen. It cannot happen.
Thank you, honorable member.
Again, Madam Speaker, and I agree that it's still subject to the Immigration Act. That's not my contention, and that's not my issue. But if you do not have sufficient Bahamians to act as arbitrators, then what we do is we put ourselves in jeopardy of having non-Bahamians that would come and take over that position. So the only point I make is that we must make sure that Bahamians are well prepared to, 1, be arbitrators, and 2, to also be persons who would represent who are prepared to represent parties when it comes to this arbitration industry, Madam Speaker. So that's one of the points that I wanted to also be very clear about, is that we must ensure that we train Bahamians and we ensure that we have the necessary facilities also to do so. The second point, Madam Speaker, is what I didn't see in the bill, which I would also encourage, is, and maybe someone on the other side could maybe refer to the point if I missed it, which is there is something called sites when you speak to arbitration centers. So you could say that the site is either in the Bahamas or the site is Turks and Caicos and so on. And you made the amendment in the arbitration amendment bill that really says that the Arbitration Act only applies to where the site is, or the seat is in the Bahamas. Again, no difficulties with that. But from what I understand, the seat and the place for the hearing could be two different places. So you could have where the seat is the Bahamas, but the place for the hearing could be Miami. The place for the hearing could be London, which, in my view, defeats the purpose in terms of encouraging the Bahamas as an arbitration center. Because I would suggest that we don't just want the site to be here, but we also want the actual hearings to be here. So again, you can sort of speak to it, comment on it, but my suggestion would be that we find a way, whether it is through legislation or otherwise, to encourage not just the site to be here, but to encourage the hearing to be here. Correct. If we really want this to be a center, because then all of the ancillary things of why we want it to be a center is here, because we want persons to travel here. We want persons to be here. We want them to set up in our hotel. We want the center to actually be here. We want you to come and spend the money here. To be able to just to be a site, I don't believe is enough. I think we also want persons to be able to come and to travel here. So what, again, I believe what would be envisioned is to actually have a center where you have rooms, you have places where persons can come, the same way how you have a Supreme Court, but where you have places where persons can come and actually have the actual arbitration hearing. So again, what I would suggest in terms of moving forward is that we look at encouraging, and as I said, whether it is through legislation or not, but we look at encouraging having the hearings here as well. And so I think, again, that would be a point that I would suggest we look at. Also, maybe one of the members on the other side can also speak to this as well, because it was a question that I had. One was, I believe, clause clause 19 of your arbitration amendment bill. It seeks to repeal clause 89 and 91 of the original Arbitration Act, which speaks to the ability to appeal on a point of law. And you are now sort of taking out that ability to appeal on a point of law. Now, again, I'm sure that this is, someone in the industry would have, made the suggestion and so on, but I just wanted to understand the reasoning behind why you would take away the right of appeal on a point of law. I could see taking it away on, to argue the facts, but I'm not quite sure why you would take away why you would restrict the uh, the appealing on the point of law, because it takes that whole section out. Because that section that speaks to appealing on a point of law, it just takes that whole section out. So I just wanted to get a clear understanding as to why we would do that. Madam Speaker, and the final point that I would make in terms of suggestions and in terms of moving forward would be, while this has been out for consultation for quite some time. I remember a note being sent out in 2018, or I remember seeing a note asking persons for consultation. I saw a note on the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce site asking for consultation. But I believe that we would benefit from some comments from the Bar Association. And my understanding is that the Bar Association has not yet fully given their comments and their review on it. And so, given the fact that the Bar Association is made up of the practitioners, the Bar Association is, the majority of practitioners in arbitration are a part of the Bar Association. And it would be my suggestion, Madam Speaker, that we hear from and get comments from the Bar Association before we complete this process. But Madam Speaker, again, as I said, this bill has been around for some time. It is, the principle of it is something that all of us agree with in terms of moving ahead with the Bahamas as an international arbitration center. It is most certainly something that we all agree with. However, in moving ahead with building an industry, we must also ensure that we build people as well at the same time. And we want to ensure that as we, in the same issue with the member for Westland, Bimini and I were talking during lunch break about building the technology industry. And one of the challenges with building a technology industry is that you must also build the talent at the same time. Because people will not come unless you have the talent, have that talent pool that they can choose from to employ. And so while we move ahead with this and while we build this industry, University of the Bahamas, BTVI, all of these entities should be on board to ensure that while we are moving ahead with building an industry, that we are also moving ahead with building the people who are going to benefit from this industry. Bahamians are some of the most talented people in the world. Without a doubt, some of the most talented people in the world. And all we need is an opportunity to show it. And so we must make sure that while we build this industry, that we prepare our people to take advantage of the opportunity that will arise. And I am sure all of us would agree that once we provide that opportunity, Bahamians, again, will be at the top of the world when it comes to the arbitration industry. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member Asmini. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Engliston.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just wanted to add a few words, thank you, to the debate. And I don't expect to be long, but you know, most politicians say that, and it means something different. But I don't think I'm one of those. But we'll see in a minute or two. But I wanted to express my gratitude to the people of Engliston who have been so faithful to the cause of the Progressive Liberal Party, and me as the symbolic representation of their commitment to that party, and to indicate that, as I have said for many years in this parliament, that in all that I do, I pray that I will never let them down. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to also commemorate and celebrate the anniversary of the birth of Lyndon Oscar Pindling. Came from East Street, went off to law school, and is a product of the early thrust of Black Bahamians in seeking to become an articulate voice in this country. And he eventually came to lead the Progressive Liberal Party and to lead the progressive cause. His place in history will be forever cemented. There will never be another. And everything that happens flows from the early thrust of the Progressive Liberal Party's efforts, which led to the, I'm trying to figure out what's going on here, man, which led to the empowerment of our people. And so we celebrate his life. We thank him in principle for the sacrifice that he has made in helping to build this sovereign state. It's also the anniversary of the birth of Cecil Whitfield. And we also celebrate the life of Cecil Whitfield. He was originally the chairman of the Progressive Liberal Party. And no, but seriously, I'm talking about the time when it took kahunas to stand up. Kahunas. To stand up. And he was a passionate, fiery voice for the Progressive Liberal cause. The member for St. Anne's read from his speech at the convention where he tendered his resignation, and he called the names of the pantheon of leaders in that cause, my father being one of them. And I knew it would be there because he and Cecil Whitfield were close friends, even to the bitter end, and they went in different directions. And so, you know, those were the days when politics did not become so cutthroat, so vicious. There were limits to how far you would take your commitment. I mean, you could be committed, but it didn't go to the source of the other person's humanity. We have a lot to learn from the men and women of that era. But the point I'm making is that in the speech, the names that were called 90% plus remained in the cause of the Progressive Liberal Party. Whitfield chose not to. And such, you know, the rest is history, the formation of the Free National Movement. But certainly I know that whatever the issues were that led to the separation, that speech speaks to his absolute commitment to the cause of the Progressive Liberal Party and its core ideals. And Lyndon Pindling led that charge, and it was the most pivotal era in our human history, and we have a lot to be grateful for. I also wanted to to speak to the C.H. Reeves, Madam Speaker. C.H. Reeves is a school that's really beginning to percolate in a way that's really quite amazing. I was at the National Awards for National Examinations. The top student in the nation in BJCs came from public school. C.H. Reeves.
Wow.
C.H. Reeves. C.H. Reeves. I can't remember his first name. His last name is Dumaine. He's a product, he came through E.P. Roberts. He lives in the Anglican community. He went to C.H. Reeves. He's finished now. He's 14, and he's gone to C.R. Walker. I think he had 10 A's and 1 B in the BJCs. And I was asking them, you know, where's his mother? And they told me that his mother died. This is an incredible story. But C.H. Reeves, and what we found in these examinations, we found that the top in 8 Mile Rock, the top public school performance, I think it was BGCSE or BJC? BGCSE was a student from 8 Mile Rock High. 8 Mile Rock High, C.H. Reeves.
Yes, sir.
No, in public schools.
Bahamas.
In public school, in the whole Bahamas, in public schools.
8 Mile Rock.
8 Mile Rock, yeah.
Yes, sir.
And so our students but CH Reeves I was talking about, they produce the top student nationally, and I'm talking about all the private schools were in the room. This boy from CH Reeves outranked all. And additionally, I want to congratulate CH Reeves for winning the GSSA basketball, girls basketball, where they're now the they're national champions in the GSSA. And of course, in the GSSA athletics, track and field, again, CH Reeves are the champions in that. And so I was there today to visit the school, but I'm really pleased at what we're seeing in many of our public schools, and I'm praying to God that we are able to keep a momentum going where our children in all the public schools will be able to find the appropriate pathway to develop their personal potential. I think Cecil Whitfield in that speech said that the journey for truth or something of that nature. I always say to develop a person's fullest potential. The other thing I wanted to speak about is, and before I move from that, I want to invite all of the colleagues here to the nationals, track and field nationals, and also Carifta Trials, which begins on Saturday. And I think you're going to see some really spectacular performances at that time. I wanted also, before I touch briefly on the legislation, to pay tribute to a very, 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 very good friend of mine. His name was Dion Bernice Strawn, and we grew up together. I met him when I was in Queens College in grade 7. You know, little mini dress and socks, and you know, everyone the big afros, and we just became lifelong friends. The member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini is also of that class, the class of 75, Queens College. Dion was just an incredible, invaluable member of that class and in all of our realities. He died about a week plus ago. And, you know, they've asked me to speak at his funeral on Friday at St. Michael's on behalf of the class of 75. Certainly, my relationship with him was well beyond even that at that point, because he became such a trusted, unconditional friend. You know, I was saying to Wilshcombe yesterday, you know, there's sometimes, you know, you have a friend who's a friend when you might not deserve the friendship because of whatever. Maybe you don't call enough, whatever the issue is. Dion was one of those. Dion valued friendships, and he was an incredible friend to me. He was also chairman of Nassau Flight Services, and Nassau Flight Services has never been the same since. He brought so many innovations to NFS, the uniforms, the website, the logo, the training, the incentivization, the HR infusion was so powerful. But it was during that time that he got ill, and he was really ill for a prolonged period. He was a vice president at Atlantis, and he went up the ranks. For many, he was a hotelier, and he went off to Cornell. He served in the UK. I mean, he was an incredible product of the possibility of our people. And the loss is just tremendous, not just as a friend to me, but as what he represented to the possibility of our people is just immense. And so we will say goodbye to him on Friday, but we are so grateful. And I want to send condolences to his wife, Linda, who has been a steady, faithful source of strength to him in his life, and his daughter, who's my godchild, Brittany. Brittany's story is another story. I'll talk about that somewhere else, but his story is just an amazing story. And then his mother, who was a senior police officer, Allardyce Strawn. Yes, one of the first credentialed police officers. And I remember one time she disarmed a suspect with a firearm, and Dion was so proud of her. She herself physically disarmed him, and so, you know, but she's one of our trailblazers in the police force. So he comes from really an excellent background. But I wanted and just one more thing on education. I want to say that we have completed the review of the high school diploma, and the recommendations have been considered by the cabinet, and we will meet again with the commission, which did 55 in-person meetings in 2 months. They went everywhere in this country, and just bipartisan, multi-agency, civil society, educators, just a cross-section. And so I will speak more about that because I think that's going to be a tremendous paradigm shift in education, because we know that under the former criteria, there were a lot of issues in terms of unfairness on the effect of young people. But I wanted to just say that we welcome this legislation, and to the member for East Grand Bahama, yes, there was probably a manifestation in 28 and 2021, but I know when I served as Minister of Transport in the 2012-17, we've been dealing with this type of thing. And this is, the maritime sector, I believe the former Justice Joan Sawyer might have chaired, if I recall correctly, she chaired a committee dealing with this. So this has a very long history. It's even beyond the dates that you have recited. I think what we celebrate is that we finally have been able to bring a final product to this House, and we're able to debate it and hopefully bring it into law. And as the member said, that there are no fundamental differences on the legislation in principle, that we agree with that. And the Prime Minister spoke about the importance of this, and he recited the fact that this is the legislation, the terms are based on the Commission on International Trade Law, United Nations, on the rules that emanate from that body. And the United Nations promotes this concept of arbitration and as an alternative way of resolving disputes. And this legislation facilitates this domestically, but also internationally. And the Prime Minister indicated that this was a companion to our financial services sector, that we position ourselves as a companion to financial services in the arbitration sphere. And he reiterated that, I think his words were, Bahamians' professionalism is unrivaled. And we accept that. I think the member for East Grand Bahama also spoke about the incredible ability of our people. And this provides an opportunity for specialized engagement of Bahamians in a new sort of wing or pathway in the financial services sector. The member for, Elizabeth, will speak about the maritime sector, and the Prime Minister also spoke about it, but we are one of the largest ship registries in the world. And where you have disputes between, in the maritime world, which is huge, our ability to facilitate as a flag state these types of disputes is an incredibly valuable avenue. And so this has implications for us in many spheres, and opportunities for Bahamians, in the Bahamas positioning itself in the maritime sector, but in general in arbitration matters. And so we believe that this is critical. The Prime Minister also spoke about the fact that this provides a convenient and accessible resolution and a safe harbor for financial services. And I think we all agree it's long overdue. We've been talking about it for a long time. We finally grabbed the bull by its horn and about to position our country as a leader in arbitration. And I think, and we've shown that in financial services, that we are, it's indisputable what Bahamians have done in the financial sector globally. And this now provides new opportunities for Bahamians to distinguish themselves in this particular sphere. I just wanted to say in general on the issue of alternative disputes, of resolution of disputes, that it has the effect of taking pressure off our courts. As we know now, we have a tremendous backlog in both criminal and civil. I believe we have in civil, that's my last recollection, because if you start a civil matter, you'd be there 4 or 5 years, you might still be trying to get that through the courts. This is a way of very succinctly and in a more timely way resolving matters, because when these matters hang over your head for prolonged periods, they have financial effect, they also have a psychological effect. And so if you're able to resolve these matters and parties agree to submit to this jurisdiction, and it brings closure. People are able to move along with their lives, and so, and it, you know, it's cost effective, and also it's a different cost from litigation, which has its own accompanying difficulties, and litigation is costly, extremely costly, and prolonged in many instances, and so. What we are doing today is important to the structural landscape of how we position ourselves, especially in the economy. And I think that it's very important that we do find um, new paradigms in our economy so that we're able to more strongly position the Bahamas in this very complex global economy. We see a lot of signals right now globally of what's happening out there. And so the Bahamas has to find a way to navigate through and ensure the sustainability of the lives of our people. And so this is one of those new paradigms that's being introduced, which potentially provides more strength to the economy. And this is just the beginning. We have to look now on how agriculture and manufacture, et cetera. And Madam Speaker, I do believe you will be seeing that in the weeks and months and years, in months and years to come, you will begin to see that thrust where the Bahamas positions itself as a self-sustaining state which is able to participate in the global economy in a more fair and just way. And so I support this legislation. I don't believe it's controversial. I believe it will inure to the benefit of our people. We do want to ensure that Bahamians become specialized in this, and I'm envisioning this, Madam Speaker, that Bahamians will become, even in the international one, with the provision that the member spoke of, where it says not being Bahamian is not a bar to serving in that role. We would wish to see, and I believe we will see it, we would wish to see Bahamians becoming, having reputations that go beyond our borders within this jurisdiction so that people will feel a level of comfort. And we see it now in the financial services sector. We see it in the law accompanying the financial services sector. Some of the lawyers who practice at this bar are so skilled and so 21st century and so on the cutting edge of this industry. So this has incredible potential for our economy, for our people. It also has the other thing I spoke of, which is being able to resolve disputes in a timely fashion, in a less costly way, so people can move on. People and businesses and companies and corporations can move on and not get stuck in a legal system which becomes overburdened. So I am pleased that despite the 2018-19, the 20, when I was there, 12-17, whenever it was, that we are finally able today. This is the great celebration. Today we are able to bring this legislation to this Parliament, and we support it 100%. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? The Chair recognizes West Grand Bahama.
That we had an arrangement just at the lunch break that we'll go for 2 speakers on both sides, and we're maintaining that. So we expect this to be their last. Then we will have our last being the member for Freetown before we conclude the debate.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Senat?
Madam Speaker, I don't recall those details. They may have been, they may have been made with someone other than myself. That's the truth. I can see that the government leader of business is looking elsewhere than in my eyes right now. So I can't say what was agreed, but that decision wasn't done with me. When the House started, I was asked how many we would have speaking. If it would be 4, I said there's 4 here now, but we have empty seats. So if any others come, I can't deny them an opportunity to represent their constituency and speak on behalf of their constituents.
Okay, I don't want to get into the back and forth.
Yes.
I think the member for St. Anne's is quite aware of the fact that dialogue takes place, and we have dialogue with members of the side opposite. And I did, Madam Speaker, and that's what we agreed to. Madam Speaker, there must also be a level of discipline in the House.
Yes.
And that's all we're talking about, Madam Speaker. We're chastised for it from time to time, and I take the chastisement when it comes. But in the circumstances when we make an agreement, if members do not wish to be as responsible, that is that member's issue. But we want to make sure that we're able to proceed as we agreed to, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member from Marco City.
The member did not have a conversation with the leader of opposition business. So he is, the member for St. Anne's is quite correct. He spoke with myself and the deputy. We are willing to honor that. We do take exception with his tone, given the consistency with which he has not honored his word on the amount of speakers on that side. It's been consistent. So, but we will in fact honor the agreement that we made earlier.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Madam Speaker.
Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Long Island.
Madam Speaker, I rise on behalf of the wonderful people of Long Island, who I have the pleasure and privilege of serving in this place. Madam Speaker, I want to also pay my respect to Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield and Sir Lyndon Pinling, and wish them also a heavenly happy birthday. These two men were foremost in the Bahamas' move towards independence and in the Bahamas' achievement of much of what we see today. They were the builders, the architects of the modern day Bahamas. Madam Speaker, I want to begin by extending condolences also to the family of catechist Oral Bow, to his wife, his daughter, Nurse Opal Bow Knowles, and her siblings, to his brother, Mr. Albert Bow, and his wife, Laverne Bow, and to his sister, Ms. Deborah Major, and to his wider family. Madam Speaker, this weekend in Long Island, we are having the Mutton Fest, and I know that Islanders will have an opportunity for the first time in a while to have some new monies coming into the local economy. And so we're looking forward to that event on the island. Madam Speaker, I also want to wish a happy birthday to Mrs. Rosemary Adderley, who celebrated, I know she don't want me to say her age, but she's getting there. She celebrated yesterday. I want to wish her a happy birthday, and I hope that she will live to enjoy many more. Madam Speaker, I have previously raised an issue here with respect to one of my constituents, and that concerns, I had maybe on three occasions already, spoke to the plight of Ms. Knowles, Ms. Joan Knowles, who was the center manager for urban renewal in Long Island. So far, she has not gotten the funds, even though the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini has nodded to me and indicated to me previously that she would be, those funds would be paid to her. Now, my understanding is that she, upon her departure from office, that she was to be paid a gratuity of 15% of her salary. It's been more than a year since she was unceremoniously sent home, but she has not been paid out the funds owed to her pursuant to this contract. And so I think it's important that people like Ms. Knowles and others who haven't yet been paid funds owed to them would be able to get their funds that they have worked for, and I believe that they have earned, and that is much needed for whatever their personal reasons might be. Madam Speaker, I want to indicate here that I too support this bill. One of the first persons to introduce me to alternative dispute resolution was a lady by the name of Ms. Ruby Nottage, Justice Ruby Nottage, classy lady, a former lecturer of mine, myself and the member for Marathon. Lovely lady. She's one of the foremost experts in alternative dispute resolution, which I'll call ADR. And she was one of those persons who imparted so much in terms of the principles of ADR and in resolving disputes, etc. Also, Dr. Peter Maynard, he was another. So much like the member for East Grand Bahama, I too had concerns with reference to, where Bahamians would fall in such a piece of legislation because, it's key that Bahamians are first and foremost, qualified Bahamians that is, such as Ms. Nottage and Dr. Maynard, in being advanced for resolution of disputes. I think it's important that we ensure that as we enact this piece of legislation, Bahamians are first priority, because we know, just like folks are bought into head big private banks and other entities, folks can be brought in to sit down as arbitrators and mediators. And so we want to be careful to ensure that Bahamians have first preference as it relates to the practice of alternative dispute resolution in the Bahamas. Again, like the member for East Grand Bahama, I too share the view that the Bahamas should be deemed or should become the arbitration center. This should be the hub. The Bahamas should be the space in which any disputes, whether it's business or otherwise, is settled. I believe that this piece of legislation would deepen the synergy between tourism, financial services, and law. The Halsbury laws of England describes alternative resolution, dispute resolution in this way. It defines it as a process by which a dispute or difference between two or more parties as to their mutual rights and liabilities is referred to and determined judicially and with binding effect by the application of law by one or more persons instead of by a court of law. Madam Speaker, ADR is becoming the preferred choice for the resolution of conflicts and disagreements. We all know that litigation is costly, it's lengthy, it lends to a public exhibition of differences, and many times it produces or it causes ill will between litigants. And so I believe this is an arena that could foster a faster, less expensive, less time consuming, and that is perhaps even more conclusive and not as protracted as litigation. Madam Speaker, I see the merits in utilizing a multi-pronged approach to dispute resolution, endorsing and employing many of the methods set out in the increasingly popular alternative dispute resolution spectrum. I've always held the view, Madam Speaker, ever since I was introduced to ADR by Justice Ruby Nottage, that the ADR guidelines could assist in alleviating much of the backlogs that we see. Lord Wolfe, the English judge, Lord Wolfe, who praised the conception of ADR, stated that litigation should be avoided wherever possible. And I believe, Madam Speaker, that ADR fosters a better management of disputes and usually quickly and efficiently resolves the disputes without people losing relationships via litigation. So we avoid the traditional legal proceedings and the risk of an unpredictable outcome. Madam Speaker, beyond the principles of ADR that I just spoke to, I believe that in the Bahamas, as we move forward, we should seek to see a greater application of alternative dispute resolution in other substantive areas. We see it in labor law, but family law as well. ADR, applying it in family law. applying it in environmental law, commercial law, public law, and even criminal law, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, as I read the seminal works of Dr. Albert Fiallo as it relates to alternative dispute resolution, you know, one of the things he stated was that the moral, ethical standards of conduct that are pertinent to the mediation and arbitration process, coupled with the level of procedural fairness and absolute confidentiality, would be of prime importance to the support and execution of alternative dispute resolution. So there's substantial benefit, you know, with respect to saving legal fees, and like I said, not jeopardizing family and friendship ties or putting at risk the entire framework of a potentially lucrative business venture during a bitter court battle. Madam Speaker, an aspect of this alternative dispute resolution spectrum, I believe, is the ombudsman. You know, we've had much talk about the ombudsman over the years. And the ombudsman could serve as a mediator and conciliator in certain instances. I have always believed that the institution of the ombudsman ought to be a critical focal point of enabling the ordinary citizen to have some affinity to the Constitution and to enjoy the benefits of constitutional protection. The ombudsman will take a pivotal role, I believe. I think this is one of the reforms that we must look at. The Office of the Ombudsman has become a part of the legal systems of the United Kingdom, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Dominica, Ghana, Namibia, and many other countries, and it's been so for quite a long time. These days, we note that the average Bahamian, and this is true, the average Bahamian, especially one who does not have a couple dollars or don't have somebody who they could borrow it from, but the average Bahamian does not have access to justice or simply cannot afford lengthy litigation. You know, an ombudsman or the ADR process comes without the normal trappings of the judicial process or the cost attending thereto. So, Madam Speaker, I believe that an ombudsman is able to bring an adjudicatory process, you know, that is somewhat informal and simple between parties of unequal size and resources. I see an ombudsman as an alternative or supplement to the court system. An alternative dispute, that too can be an alternative dispute mechanism. Madam Speaker, in Jamaica, for example, most jurisdictions have one ombudsman, particularly in the Caribbean, but in Jamaica, there's three. And, you know, when you talk about the spheres of responsibility, you have a utilities ombudsman in Jamaica. Here again, this is the person who settles disputes via alternative means. So the utilities ombudsman in Jamaica deals with public utility issues, such as intervening in disputes relating to utility companies, excessive bills, incorrect billing, defective meters, disconnections, unavailability of services, inadequate street lighting, illegal telephone calls, estimated bills, lost luggage. And then you have a political ombudsman who deals with all political matters and settles political disputes between parties, for example. And then, of course, there's a parliamentary ombudsman who deals with matters concerning government and statutory agencies. And I believe, so therefore I believe, Madam Speaker, that creating this role of ombudsman would lend to greater efficiency in the government sector in particular. You know, some of the benefits speak to the need, or we will see the resolution, quicker resolution, I believe, in issues concerning disputes between an individual and the state, and avoid some of the inordinate delays that we see. The need to have the ombudsman should also be, or this ombudsman should also be vested with the power to refer cases for mediation or other alternative dispute resolution processes. I think where you have an absence of legal aid for small or some civil cases, right, there's two undergirds the argument for the creation of an ombudsman, because there are persons who simply can't afford to be a part of such cases. They don't have the funding. And then you have the absence of a human rights and the absence of a human rights commission, or we want to strengthen it. I think it's a strong argument for the creation of the office of an ombudsman here again, as relates to human rights. And then again, for the enhancement of the jurisdiction, or for that is of the ombudsman, or the creation of the jurisdiction of ombudsman, where such a person would have an inquisitorial style that is not the same as, say, a court. You understand? Can look into other issues, other matters that don't necessarily have to rise to the level of going to a court. Madam Speaker, let me speak about ADR. I read about small claims court, and then some will say, okay, that's what the magistrate court is for. No, I'm not referring to the magistrate court. You know, there's seminal works that speak to small claims courts and refer to it as distinguishable from the regular magistrate courts, where small claims, which constitute the vast majority of the cases you see anyhow, that pass through the litigation system, these small claims can be ventilated another place, rather than clogging the system where you may have larger, more commercial issues having to be heard. So a small claims court, I believe, should not be bound by any of the rules of procedure except for those of fair play and common sense. Could be manned by laypersons. It's a jurisdiction that could cover, let's say, debt collection or petty civil claims and consumer matters. And the hearings can be informal, and strict rules of evidence don't necessarily have to apply. See, the role of a person, an arbiter or a magistrate in a small claims court could be clearly distinguished to that of a regular magistrate. And so, Madam Speaker, I do support this bill. I do have my views as to how the bill could be perhaps bettered, but I also believe that there are other avenues to explore as relates to alternative dispute resolution and to the resolution of small court claims, small civil claims. And I think the office of an ombudsman will be pivotal to resolving disputes between the state and individuals. So, Madam Speaker, on that note, I rest and I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many,
Madam Speaker, this was
the chair recognizes the Honorable Member for St. Anne's
during my presentation, please.
to lay the document.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Order that the document be brought up.
Thank you.
Order that the document do lie on the table. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Freetown.
Madam Speaker, thank you. And with that good-hearted laughter, good afternoon. Madam Speaker, as always, we are all able to be here through the grace of God, each and every one of us, and me in particular through the forbearance and grace of the people of Freetown. Madam Speaker, before I begin, as the member for St. Anne's read something, I'm directed to read this by some people who may say they pin diaper on me, but since we are acknowledging birthdays, I'd wish to acknowledge the birthday of a centurion who hails from Ragged Island in the name of Enid Lockhart. And I quote, and this is what one of our relatives wrote, her daughter. Monroe was here with the DPM, and Chester said Monroe will be speaking tomorrow in Parliament. This is how We don't keep any secrets in Ragged Island. Ashton, well, Marco said he can't keep some things to himself. We got to train him out of that. Monroe called Ashton to ask about a brief history of what to say about Grammy. And this is what they sent me to say about Grammy, Madam Speaker. Enid Lockhart and family were honored to sit and talk with the DPM Chester Cooper and Minister Wayne Monroe on a beautiful sunny day in Nassau, Bahamas after so many rainy days. Enid was taught to sew by Pleasant Monroe, Monroe's Grammy, at the age of 12. When she saw how good Enid was, she said, "Now Enid, you could beat me sewing, so make me a dress." Enid made dresses for her and her sister Verlene, which they wore and were photographed in Cuba, where they spent much time vacationing prior to 1960. For those who don't know, before the revolution, we in Ragged Island went to doctor shopping in Cuba instead of coming up to New Providence, which was a further journey. Enid and her friend and cousin, Nita Lockhart, sewed for all the women of Ragged Island, and Enid gave back to the society by lining the coffins built by Cecil and Halton Lockhart. Enid came to Nassau to reside as a young woman and worked in Mademoiselle. She lived in Peter Street, where she and her aunt, Eugenia Lockhart, sewed for many ladies in the area, including the mother of the former Prime Minister, Dr. Minnis, Mrs. Rosalie North, who was a dear friend. Enid is well-traveled and often went to see her sister Ethel, who settled in Iowa. I was told that in the particular hospital, Enid's 6 children were the 6 first Black people born to be born in that hospital. And how someone from Ragged Island find themselves in Iowa is but a mystery. 8 of her children and grands were fortunate to meet the DPM, who took time out of his busy schedule to present Enid with a lovely bouquet of flowers and talk to her and her family about her beloved Ragged Island. DPM talked about Maxine Wallace's Valentine party in Ragged Island, which he attended, and says that we need to have more homecomings, but agrees that since Hurricane Irma, the building up of Ragged Island is still ongoing. He also talked of her twin sisters, Sheila Curlin, owner of a restaurant in Ragged, and Florinda Hepburn. Both of them reside in Nassau, just around the corner from each other. It was a high day at the Lockett's Ranch during the visit, as the DPM was escorted by our very own Wayne Monroe, who serves as Minister of National Security and whose grandfather was the cousin of Enid Lockhart, who is celebrating 100 years today. To God be the glory. Ashton reports to me that when he asked Enid Lockhart how she felt today, she said, "As good as gold and fine as silk." Madam Speaker, when people who pin diaper on you tell you what to say, you really should listen, especially if your mother is still alive. Madam Speaker, I join also with commemorating the birth of 2 great men, departed now, the late Sir Lyndon Pinland and Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield. I hope that what I'm about to say is taken in the spirit in which it is advanced. There were 2 great F&M leaders, Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield and Hubert Alexander Ingram, both former chairmen of the Progressive Liberal Party. Unfortunately, the member for Kalani was not an office bearer of the Progressive Liberal Party. There's still time, Marco City, if you come from the dark side over here. But these great men, in their way, contributed to this country just as many others did. And we remember and commemorate them all as we seek our place in what will be the pantheon of the development in this country. With that, Madam Speaker, we are here to debate two laws that relate to arbitration. Let me say this. You, Madam Speaker, are the judge in this place. Arbitration is about the settlement of disputes. We have quite a bit of disputes here. There's a dispute about whether or not this side breached the Procurement Act. I say no. Marco City says yes. That is a dispute that is not settled on the ipsa dixit of either myself or Marco City, as much as he would wish it to be. We have a dispute, it would appear, about the legality of the special drawing rights. We say that nothing improper happened. The side opposite appears to assert that there was something inappropriate. On both of those issues, Madam Speaker, the members of the public, who one would say make up the court of public opinion, to whom I suspect the other side caters and panders to, are free to arrive at their own decisions. You see, Madam Speaker, the Public Procurement Act is available free online that people use to go on social media. And if one wants to know about the special drawing rights, there's nothing mysterious about it. There's an International Monetary Fund website, and if you Google special drawing rights, what are they? It will take you directly there, and it will tell you that it is not a loan to the country. And it'll tell you a lot of other interesting things that if you are to exercise judgment as the court of public opinion, you can inform yourself. So you do not have to be told by the other side or by the media, who the member for Fox Hill says is really just all in the same camp. We are intelligently, incredibly intelligent people as Bahamians. We can read, we can digest, we can comprehend. I invite your consideration to the facts that you have. We got the good ones. We got the good ones. That's why you work with what is left. Well, you know, they could have the container of paper, Marco City. I have God on my side, so I don't fear the arrow that flies by night or the pestilence that walks in the night. Madam Speaker, there is some dispute, it would appear, about this Royal Caribbean situation. And I only touch on it before I go to the meat of my presentation for this reason. There appears to be some suggestion that there's some what the English would call dithering. But for the consumption of the court of public opinion, the difference between the PLP and the FNM can be shown by the details of this deal. Under the RCL deal that the former administration made, that everyone except that my MP, the Minister for Finance, were party to, and because of the same collective responsibility that they tout, they are all responsible for. The difference is this: the government was giving RCL, the land that it had previously agreed to give to Bahamian, Toby Smith. The tentative agreement, subject to conditions that is advanced now, is that the RCL is not given any land that was previously given to a Bahamian. In the previous iteration, RCL would have had complete dominion of their development. In the iteration now, RCL will not be able to run ferry service, which is reserved for Bahamians by the policy and still is. The government will impose a tourism development levy of 1%, where previously none was imposed. The government is to insist that Bahamians have actual equity in the development. So ordinary Bahamians will participate in it. And for the very first time, I believe, and seniors like Angliston can tell me, land that is being granted will not be given for some paltry sum. The previous agreement was a 150-year lease at $140,000 per year. The current proposal is value the land, we have that skin in the game, we get equity participation for what you are getting. You do not get it for free. Angliston is a big woman. She looks after herself quite fine. She doesn't need my protection, East Grand Bahama. The bottom line to it, Madam Speaker, is that when you litigate questions, when you look at what was then and what is now, the Bahamian people will see and can read who looks out for them in protecting industries reserved for them, who looks out for them by getting them equity, and who just gives it all away. Madam Speaker, I'll just say this, and my cousin can take it as he will. Fox Hill has set out who is to judge this. And the irony of this exchange is that the arbitration provisions are just bills that turn into act where people choose who is to make the decision. And that is what the bills we are debating are about. As free individuals, we get to choose who is to be the judge of an issue. If I were not comfortable with the member for Cat Island, Ramkey and St. Salvador being the judge of this, then I know what to do. But the system that we have sets him as the judge. If any of us are not comfortable with Madam Speaker being the judge of what happens in here, we are free to do what we have to do. That's right. The issue with arbitration that I would wish the Bahamian public to grasp quite firmly is this. Arbitration is an agreement to have somebody else determine your dispute other than the court. That's it, plain and simple. And so the simple concept that has been back and forward that everyone should grasp is that we all have a choice. An arbitration is about agreeing to be subject to your dispute being resolved by somebody you choose to resolve it. No more, no less. Now, when we move on with the matter, Madam Speaker, no one on this side claims that we are reinventing the wheel. That would be a wasteful pursuit. In the blueprint for change, and this was our agreement with the Bahamian people, at item 10 on page 50, it says that the PLP will implement the National Development Plan initiated by the last PLP administration that provides a coordinated approach for the inclusive national development to create a more resilient and vibrant Bahamas. Vision 2040 provides a roadmap for the future development of the Bahamas and includes a comprehensive policy framework that will guide government decision-making and investment over the next 19 years. This initiative was developed in partnership with the Inter-American Development Bank and close cooperation with the University of the Bahamas and the Bahamas Chamber of Commerce and Employers Confederation. Madam Speaker, the draft National Development Plan includes a section that deals with this area. Particularly, item 14.6.5 says this: the goal is to develop the Bahamas as a center for international arbitration. And the action points, the outputs were to develop an action plan for the establishment of the Bahamas Arbitration Government Agency Center addressing the following: the passing of arbitration bill and regulation, and this is important, enactment of the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, model law on international commercial arbitration. And so from the National Development Plan, this was a commitment. Now, it ought not to have been controversial, and nobody takes the credit nobody seeks to steal any glory from the other side. In fact, in The Guardian, 22nd of January 2021, there was a headline, government focused on making Bahamas a leading arbitration center, a nice picture of the member for Kalani. And he yesterday committed the government to charting a new course to develop a uniquely Bahamian model that would position this jurisdiction as a leading center for international commercial arbitration in the Americas. And it goes on until we get to the quote from Dr. Minnis. What does it mean to chart a new course? For the Bahamas, we are primarily focused on establishing our jurisdiction as a leading center for international commercial arbitration in the Americas. We are on the cusp of the Bahamas becoming a United Nations Commission on International Trade Law, model law jurisdiction, once the International Commercial Arbitration Bill 2018 is enacted, end quote. What that means, Madam Speaker, is that the side opposite drafted a bill in 2018 in their first year in office. In their last year of office, they hadn't passed it. It hadn't been acted upon. There were 2 years, a year and a half of COVID, where there was very limited excuses to be diverted. But in 2018, they drafted the bill, and in January 2021, as it turned out prophetically to be their last year of government, they still hadn't passed it. And so no, we don't think that this is some brilliant idea that we alone conceived of. It's actually the model law. That's what it is. It's the model law from the UN. And so when we are accused of taking things that they didn't finish and finishing them, that happens quite a lot. But if you see a child starving, you would feed it. And the fact that somebody else may have given birth to it wouldn't stop you feeding it. That would be an indictment on the person who didn't feed it. And so this bill largely was forecast in the National Development Plan in 2016, was drafted in 2018, and then silence other than talking. Carmichael always says, we are to be known by what we do, not what we say. You all said you were going to enact it. We actually are enacting it. Now, with that little bit out of the way, it's fairly uncontroversial because it is the subject of consultation. Nobody could really complain. There were some items raised legitimately by members opposite. And the first that I would wish to address is the issue surrounding Section 13, which provides no bar on participants based on nationality. And this concept of how do we have Bahamianization of this center. We started by saying that arbitration is a choice. So you choose whether you put an arbitration clause in your contract or not. For all Bahamian business people, I would recommend that you look at your contracts. There are two important clauses, and you can take it as free advice. One that will say which law applies to your contract and make sure it's Bahamian law. One will say, and that will include also what dispute resolution process you adopt. The choices are arbitration or the courts. You may choose arbitration for reasons we will get to very shortly. And then within the arbitration clause, you will see provisions as to where the seat of the arbitration will be, and that will be backward and forward. Well, it's a very simple concept. If we want to draw by this international commercial arbitration bill, international commercial arbitration to the Bahamas from people who aren't in the Bahamas, if they have to agree to it, if we put a lot of hurdles in their way, they simply won't agree to it. They will have the choice to say the seat can be in New York. You can have a seat in New York applying Bahamian law. You can have a seat anywhere applying Bahamian law. So if you put too many hurdles in people's way, they can simply choose not to have the seat of arbitration in the Bahamas. And then you will never end up as a leading center for arbitration. And so while we incentivize our people to prepare themselves, you will have to look very candidly of what has to happen if you want to make this a center. The benefits of this being a center is physically it's here. So you have benefits for the office spacing, the people to service that. And of course, if it's here, the chances of Bahamian professionals being engaged in it is much higher than if the seat is in New York. So let us not deceive ourselves. Arbitration is a matter of choice in a contract. And if we want to make this a center, we have to determine what approaches in policy will encourage foreigners to decide to come and arbitrate their matters in the Bahamas as opposed to any of the other places that they could choose to set as the seat of their arbitration. And so that is quite deliberate why the act looks like that, why the UN Uniform Code looks like that, and that will be the challenge. The senior people used to say it could be a matter of being penny wise and pound foolish. You have 100% of nothing instead of 10% of quite a lot. And so to the public, that is the reality of arbitration. We wish to have a commercial arbitration center, international center. I believe at one time the destination was supposed to be Grand Bahama. In fact, the commercial court was to be in Grand Bahama to facilitate it. If we are serious about this, we need to look sensibly. The first step being the legislation, the next step in execution being now to drive the actual center. Much is left to do, but we have to keep our sound heads to do it. The next question raised was, why are we limiting by Section 17 in the Amendment Act? And there is a similar limit in the International Commercial Arbitration Act, which is Section 48, limiting potential challenges to an award. The whole purpose of arbitration is for it to be as final as possible. And so in order for it to be as final as possible, you seek to limit the ways in which you can challenge it. You can challenge it for the reasons set out. The reality is this: a lot of people use arbitration for confidentiality, because if you take a matter before the courts, it's public. There are many reasons people don't like to do their business in public. I know a couple right off the top. But the moment that a matter leaves arbitration and hits the courts are in public. And so you will lose all the benefit of selecting arbitration for privacy if you have an unfettered access to the court. The policy, philosophically, you can try to assail it. There's been no pushback from it. And these two pieces of legislation is for the award of an arbitrator to be as final as possible. Bearing in mind that this is something you agree to. If you don't want to agree to this regime, you simply don't have to agree to arbitration. It's not very complex, it's not very a difficult concept. When you sign up to arbitration, you will be signing up to say, this award will be as final as possible. This is the only ways that we can challenge it. If you don't like that, then all you need to do is not select arbitration as a dispute resolution process in your agreement. I trust that that addresses that. Now, before I take my seat, may I raise and touch two issues. The first is the scope of arbitration. The Bahamian public should know a fact that is known. Litigation can be costly, it can take time. Arbitration can be a much swifter solution. If you agree to arbitration, your arbitrator is your arbitrator. You do not get in the line called the listing office to get a date from a judge. Your arbitrator is your arbitrator that sets schedules and delivers. My people need to know, as Long Island has said, commercial matters aren't the only matters that you can arbitrate. Family disputes can be arbitrated, any numbers of disputes. The one type of dispute that I hope and pray starts to go more to arbitration is matters involving churches. In my denomination, there are ecclesiastical courts that avoid our matters supposedly going to the courts of man. Most of our religious faith believe that you're supposed to be judged not by the courts of man, but by believers. I would say in the hearing of our people, the churches are able, in their founding documents, in their agreements, to select arbitration set up in accordance with whatever their faith believes for the resolution of any disputes that arise. And so I've been involved in a number of cases involving the church, where you would have a Pentecostal being represented by by two Anglicans before an Anglican or Roman Catholic judge, when their whole tenet is that you are supposed to be judged by believers. I would like the public to be fully aware that the Arbitration Act as amended applies as forcefully to church matters. And there are some fraternal organizations that end up before the courts. It applies to any organization that wishes to avoid the courts of man. It is an act that is there. It saves you going to the court with the expense and time that may be involved. The last point I would wish to make before I take my seat is this. Arbitrators generally are paid. You do not require a lawyer to represent you in an arbitration. And so that issue may be covered, and you needn't be represented in an arbitration. We will have to give serious thought about whether there's any space in this area for publicly funded arbitrators, or whether we will condemn people without the resources to pay an arbitrator to be stuck with burdening our courts. That is a matter of policy that I would speak in your hearing for consideration. We are recommending arbitration as a necessary and efficient means of settling disputes. And if that is so, then for myself, anything that we can do to assist those who are less fortunate ought to happen. And so, Madam Speaker, on this day when many great people were born, and in this month where many great people were born, kicked off by yours truly on the 1st of March, Freetown unreservedly supports these two bills. And I can't help but be petty once in a while, Madam Speaker. It would be good if some people, I'm not talking about only Marco City, could stay out of our business.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to amend the Arbitration Act 2009. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to amend the Arbitration Act 2009.
For the second reading of bills?
Madam Speaker, I move for the second reading of the International Commercial Arbitration Bill 2023.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a second time and committed. A bill for an act to provide for international commercial arbitration. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Order that the bill be read a second time and committed.
A bill for an act to provide for international commercial arbitration.
No further second readings, Madam Speaker. I just did. Done. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
No further. Committee of the Whole?
Madam Speaker, I now move that the House resolves itself in the Committee of the Whole with the Deputy Speaker in the chair.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, honorable members. It has been moved and seconded that the House do now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole with the Deputy Speaker in the chair. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The House will now resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole with the Deputy Speaker in the chair.
Okay. No? Committee of the Whole?
Mr. Chair, I now move that the long title of the Arbitration Amendment Bill 2023 be agreed.
Long title?
Arbitration Amendment.
Okay, all right. Hold on. Just trying to get this sorted out.
No amendments.
No. Okay. Is there a seconder? It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill is agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The short title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chairman, I move that sections 1 through sections 22 be agreed.
1 through 22? It has been moved and seconded that section 1 through 22 is agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Section 1 through 22 is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that the bill in its entirety be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The bill in its entirety is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move for the long title of the International Commercial Arbitration Bill 2023 be agreed.
Long time. It has been moved and seconded that the long title of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The long title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that the short title of the bill be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the short title of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The short title of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that sections Part 1 through Part 8 be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that section 1 through 8 is agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Section 1 through 8 is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that the schedule be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the schedule of the bill be agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The schedule of the bill is agreed.
Mr. Chair, I move that the bill in its entirety be agreed.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill in its entirety be agreed. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The bill in its entirety is agreed.
No further third readings, Mr. Chair. I now move that the Speaker now take the chair.
It has been moved and seconded that the Speaker do now take the chair. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. The Speaker will now take the chair. Yeah, that was it. Madam Speaker, I beg leave to report that the committee has examined several bills making no amendments thereto.
Honorable members, the Deputy Speaker and Chairman of the Committee of the Whole has reported that the committee has examined the bills having made no amendments to. Thereto. Third reading and passing of bills.
Madam Speaker, I now move for the third reading and passing of the Arbitration Amendment Bill 2023.
Is there a seconder? Thank you very much. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and pass. Arbitration Amendment Act. No. A bill for an act to amend the Arbitration Act 2009. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to amend the Arbitration Act 2009.
Motion is carried for the third reading. This one? Oh, one at a time. That is correct. Order that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be Arbitration Amendment Act 2023. For the third readings.
Speaker, I now move for the third reading and passing of the International Commercial Arbitration Bill 2023.
Thank you, Honorable. Thank you, Honorable Member. It has been moved and seconded that the following bill be read a third time and passed. A bill for an act to provide for international commercial arbitration. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. Ordered that the bill be read a third time and passed.
A bill for an act to provide for international commercial arbitration.
The motion is carried. Ordered that this bill do now pass and the title thereof declared to be International Commercial Arbitration Act 2023. For the third reading and passing of bills?
No further third readings.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Ordered that the clerk do now take the bills passed in this honorable House today to the Honorable Senate for their concurrence. Now, we will revert back to the order of business. Consideration of Senate's amendments, resolutions, member statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Fox Hill.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to acknowledge the work of a committee, which is an ad hoc committee formed in Fox Hill over the last month called the Peace Committee. And when I left this morning, before I came here, they had their inaugural meeting with young people in Fox Hill. So today they had students from L.W. Young, Doris Johnson, Capron, and Sandlands Primary School to talk about the issues of violence, conflict resolution, and peace in conjunction with the Fox Hill Urban Renewal Office headed by Sonia Kemp, who herself lost her son 10 years ago almost now in an act of violence on Freedom Park where 4 Fox Hillians died. And again, matter still hasn't reached trial yet. So you know the burden she's carrying. And it's extraordinary the number of people in the Fox Hill constituency who are mothers who are in that position, who've lost people from gunshot wounds. So this program was inaugurated by Jamal Davis in conjunction with the Fox Hill Urban Renewal Office to try and talk to kids about violence and conflict resolution. And I want to thank them for doing that. It was held at the Fox Hill Community Center. And I was explaining to them how when I was born, I think I said this so many times, 1953, the life expectancy at birth of male child was 50 years of age. I managed to live until 69 now, which is 19 years beyond that time. Today, a boy born in this country, 2022, can expect to live to be 72 years of age. So it is possible for you to manage your life in such a way as to make it in the longer term as opposed to the shorter term. And we must do everything we can to prevent 16-year-olders, 20-year-olders, 21-year-olders dying or killing themselves in the course of what could be a wonderful life. There's a lady in Fox Hill, everyone called her Margwenny. She lived to be 106 years of age. There are two women now, Miriam Roca, who is 99, Nurse Curtis, who is 99. I was telling these kids, you know, you are sitting in a community center today, and last night I took a picture with four of them outside the practice of the Junkanoo group, and I said to them, I ask you to I'm taking this photograph of you because 50 years from now, I will be nowhere around, but you will be here. It's possible for you to be here. And when you see this photograph 50 years from now, I hope you remember this night. And so our gift to them is to try and have them internalize this lesson, that it is possible to live in a society in peace. And I ended with the invocation from the Anglican service that says all of us must do the things that make for peace and build up the common life. And I encourage that and want to thank them and congratulate them for that. This is a very important message. And as I said to them, and they all seem to know, I said, and then we end by saying, the peace of the Lord be always with you. And I asked them, what is the answer? And they said, and also with you. So, and also with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Marathon.
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Speaker, and to my colleagues. I rise on behalf of the great constituent of Marathon. And of course, I would like to extend my condolences to the former Assistant Commissioner of Police, Mr. Leon Bethel, who's known as the General, and he certainly was the General. He lives in Marathon, and of course, I had an opportunity to work with Mr. Bethel. He used to be my boss at one point in CDU, and I want to say that Mr. Bethel has contributed significantly to this country. He was a nation builder, particularly in the police department against crime fighting. He was, of course, a disciplinarian, very strong. I wouldn't say harsh, but strong. And I would say that a lot of us as former police officers and police officers, we have learned much from him. Zero tolerance. And I want to extend condolences to his wife, Vernal Bethel, his son, Orion, and LJ. I know that initially there was not going to be a military funeral, but of course it's now going to be one. And of course, his family doesn't mind me mentioning it. However, so there'll be a memorial and a military funeral. And of course, I would like to extend condolences to Mateo Rule, very young individual, 24 years of age, lives in Marathon, just recently died. I want to extend condolences to his family. And of course, to our very own Urban Renewal has suffered a loss just recently. And I would say that the staff is feeling it. Angie Campbell from Cat Island, she was a manager at Cat Island Urban Renewal, and she is since stationed here just for a few weeks, few months, because of her illness. And even through her illness, she worked. Even at times we saw that she was really ill, and she just wanted to stay to work. And so I want to extend condolences, and we did, on behalf of the Minister, Obadiah Wilshcombe, myself, the executive team, and the entire staff. We want to extend condolences to her family and her twin sister, who I say is feeling it really the most. And so that is it, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for South Beach.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for recognizing me. Madam Speaker, I rise very quickly to say to the constituents of South Beach, to remind them of the town hall meeting tomorrow afternoon at 6:30 at the New Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church, where we will have the member for Carmichael, the Minister of Immigration, come and speak to us on the government's policy with regards to immigration. So we're asking everybody to come out and those in the surrounding constituencies and South Beach in general. Hope to see everybody out tomorrow afternoon. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for St. Barnabas.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'll try to be very brief. I'd like to send my prayers and condolences to the Taylor family. Ms. Taylor, who lives in the Rock Crusher community, and all of her children, in particular, a good brother and friend of mine, Archie Taylor. I attended the funeral on Saturday, and may her soul rest in peace. I never asked Ms. Taylor her politics, but it was assumed that she was a member of the Progressive Republican Party. But she loved me. She loved me nonetheless. While I'm on my feet, Madam Speaker, I didn't take part in the contribution today. Contribution today. But I just wanted to, Madam Speaker, just quickly to just pay honor to the life and legacy of both Sir Lyndon Pinley and Sir Cecil Wallace Whitfield. And I was commenting to the member from Marco City that it is so surreal that these men were born, in the same year, in the same month, in the same month. But in particular, Madam Speaker, obviously there is so much that you can say about both men, about Sir Lyndon, about Sir Cecil, but there's one thing I just want to say, and I think it's instructive, that in their lives, Sir Lyndon, in terms of his leadership and involvement in majority rule, and Sir Cecil in his involvement in the beginning and the start of the Free National Movement, that they would have contributed to fundamental planks of democracy in our country, that the majority should rule, and that you must have vibrant dissent in a democracy, Madam Speaker. And so we are forever grateful for the legacy. Sorry? Yeah, that's fine. But what it speaks to, too, Madam Speaker, I wish to add this as well, that conflict in politics or in a democracy is not necessarily a bad thing. And if you look throughout history, whether it's the conflicts that former Prime Minister Perry Christie had with his own party and then became Prime Minister, Hubert Ingraham, who was a member of the PLP, had conflict and became Prime Minister. Conflict is not necessarily a bad thing in our democracy. And it leads to, and it leads to a better democracy. It leads to a better democracy, and very important for us in our development. Lastly, Madam Speaker, the leader of the opposition, I had an opportunity last week to go and sit with Mrs. Louise Bosfield, who's a meritorious council member in the Free National Movement. She celebrated her 102nd birthday. 100. And to see the energy and the intelligence and the engagement at 102, and the humor. She said the statement that the sickest sometimes don't always die the quickest, And so just pray that God continues to cover her. And lastly, last evening, myself, the member for Fox Hill and the member for Pinewood, we are, even though I'm junior in that, we are very privileged to be a part of a group called the Lunch Bunch. And last night we had the opportunity to pay our respects to the late Ed Bethel. Ed Bethel, who is a legend in his own right. I met Ed Bethel when I was 10 years old. So 36 years ago, I'm a product of ZNS. I'm a ZNS baby, as the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini knows. My father worked there from 1977. So I got to know Ed Bethel and all the legends who were there, Kelsey Johnson, Charles Carter, Mike Smith, and so forth. And That's right, you were there. You're. Madam Speaker, later on, as I said, I've been privileged to become a member of Lunch Bunch, that the member for Foxhill and the member of Pinewood and I, we share those connections among some other things. And getting to know Ed Bethel was just a reminder of the great contribution that he made to our country, not only just in journalism, but also in terms of in the diplomatic corps, Madam Speaker. In 1992, I'm going to finish right now, Madam Speaker. In 1992, when the Free National Movement became the government, for the first time, Madam Speaker, because, you know, as far as persons were concerned, Ed Bethel was the voice out there, and if Ed Bethel didn't say it, it wasn't true. And my cousins and I, we were sitting around waiting for the results to come in. And there was this big debate about if the FNM had won the election. And one of my cousins said at the time, yeah, man, the FNM won because he heard Ed Bethel say it. So that was an interesting story, that Ed Bethel and his legacy and what he's given the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, a real gentleman, as they say, a gentleman and a scholar, Madam Speaker. And so I send my condolences to his entire family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Nassau Village.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. Madam Speaker, I rise on my feet, of course, by the auspices of the great constituents of Nassau Village, and I thank them for electing me. But but what I like to do is offer condolences to the McIntosh family, and to the Andrews family, to the Williams family, and also to the Roll family. Over the weekend, I spent my birthday in beautiful Long Island, and I was contacted regarding 3 homicides in my constituency. 2 to constituents directly, Miss Florence Andrews. Her son, she would have lost her son on, I would say, the Cowpen Road incident. And then also to Miss Veronica Williams, who would have lost her son to the violence inside the yard on Sampson Street. And 2 months before that, the McIntosh family, to their son down on East Esmeralda of Nassau Village. And the reason I raise this point is because there seems to be a trend occurring with gun violence in the constituency. And I would just like to actually extend condolences, sincerest condolences to them, because all of those young men would have been under 35 years old. And it's truly a loss to the constituency. But I also would like to commend the Prime Minister and the Member of Parliament for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador for joining the joint lawsuit against the U.S. Companies for $10 billion. It is a step in the right direction as we try to bring and we aggressively engage the persons who are actually leading to violence on the streets. So once again, my sincerest condolences to all of the impacted and affected families. I stand with you, and thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Yamacraw.
Speaker, it's always good to see you. Good afternoon. I didn't have a chance to say welcome back, and it's not a lotion like my good MP would normally do. I'm just happy to see you. Who's my MP? So in the East. Madam Speaker, I rise on this occasion to acknowledge the hardworking team in Yamacraw who have been so busy taking so many initiatives in hand. And we are very active. We're trying to get some things done in terms of infrastructure-wise. And this includes, we know we have a lot of persons who walk the streets for exercise in the mornings and the evenings. And so we are working on getting our sidewalks completed in Yamacraw so that we have safe areas to walk, because the early mornings are darker when a lot of persons are on the street. And we are happy that people are taking their initiatives of better health and eating and at hand, and you can see that very active in Yamakroa. And so I want to commend the team members there who are helping me with every initiative. They had a very successful bingo night at the library, which has become a main center that has, a part of Elizabeth Estates, and the other eastern community is Yamakroa constituency. So on the topic of healthy eating, we're having a farmer's market. And this farmer's market in the east, we're hoping that this farmer's market can provide fresh fruits, vegetables, and for artisans to come and showcase not only what they're growing, what they have created at this farmer's market on Nassau East Boulevard. It is April 1st, and that is the same time we are doing our Easter event for the children. So on the Nassau East South Boulevard, there's a park. The park, there will be the Easter egg hunt, and on the opposite side of the park is an open area, which is an extension of the park, where we'll have the Yamakroa Farmers Market. And we're asking for all of the eastern area persons to come. The same opportunities and items that you would normally be able to get at the Gladstone area. You can now wake up early in the morning, and some people who don't like to brave the traffic in that area, they can come to the east and please support the Yamakroa Farmers Market. This supports our food initiative of self-security in food and also eating healthy. And so I invite yourself, Madam Speaker, and all parliamentarians here to come out and bring their supporters to support April 1st, 8 o'clock in the morning. We'll be there until 4. And that is on Nassau East Boulevard. You can call the office, and there are still a few more tents we're giving first preference for Yamakroa residents. But if you're interested in securing a tent to sell your wares, then you can contact the Yamakroa office. Check out the MP Zane Lightborn Yamakroa Facebook page, and you can get all of the information there also. It's a very active site. So like, share, follow. We appreciate your support, and thank you, Yamakroa. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for St. Anne's.
Madam Speaker, I have a matter that was brought up by a constituent yesterday. They have 2 commercial properties in the Palmdale area, and they were notified this month, contacted by one of these collection agencies that have apparently been engaged by the Inland Revenue Department. And the sum outstanding came out once they were advised what the collection agency was trying to charge, to a figure in the range of 25%. There was some almost $50,000 that was being claimed by the collection agency that needed to be paid right away, or they needed to enter into a payment option agreement to repay the collection fee. Now, I don't know what the terms are that the Inland Revenue Department has engaged persons on, but historically there's been issues with the Real Property Tax Department, and there may have been notice that collection agencies would be involved in collecting taxes going forward. But I would think that those collection fees would come out from what the government receives, a percentage of what is paid, not pay the entire property taxes plus 25% on top of that. In this case, almost $50,000. If there can be some position given by representatives from the Ministry of Finance today or at some later point, that would be helpful. But outside of that 25% fee, this constituent had previously written a representative from Inland Revenue back in 2019 and requested that they be able to pay their tax by a certain date. They never got a response back from the Real Property Tax Department, so they assumed that was, in fact, something that was acceptable. And the collection agent shows up at their property on more than one occasion in recent days, putting them under tremendous stress. And if they had signed something agreeing to enter into a payment agreement of some $50,000 over the next 2 years, I told them that sounds like they're putting you under duress. I think that this administration needs to look at what's actually going on, not just with the engagement of the collection agencies, but how they're behaving and conducting themselves. And if they think this New Day government, that that's the proper way to deal with the Bahamian people, then they're going to find that a number of persons are not going to be in agreement with them, including this member of parliament.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Bain and Grandstand.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and good afternoon, everybody. I stand on behalf of the good people of the Bain and Grandstand constituency. Madam Speaker, I want to extend a sincere thank you to the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini. We had a branch meeting last night at the Woodcock Primary School. It was well attended. And the member for West Grand Bahama and Bimini, the Minister Obi Wilschcombe, presented. Minister Wilschcombe. I'm thanking you for last night. He did an excellent job on enlightening our constituents with respect to some of the services that are offered at the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development. So I want to say thank you for that again, Minister Wilschcombe. I also want to speak directly to the constituents of Bain and Grandstown. On Saturday, the 25th of March at 9 a.m., our breakfast in the park, free breakfast in the park program continues. We normally have this program once a month, Madam Speaker. And it will be on Enid Street in Poland Division number 3. And we would like for persons to come out and start promptly at 9 a.m. in the Bain and Grandstown constituency. In addition to that, Madam Speaker, on the 30th of March this year, we will be conducting a free legal clinic and expungement workshop for all the young men and women in the constituency who may have traversed the law and may be seeking to have their records expunged. So we have that clinic that will be held at the Woodcock Primary School on the 30th at 6:30 p.m. So we'd like as many persons to register as possible to be a part of that. And in addition to that, Madam Speaker, our second annual Bain and Grandstown Summer Games is slated to start in the summer months. And I just wanted to preempt the constituents so that they will know we are seeking coaches, we are looking for managers, and we are also looking for team players. Pardon me? Three sports, basketball, track and field, and softball. So hopefully our games will be bigger than it was last year, Madam Speaker. And we're hoping that it will be as successful as it was last year. With that being said, Madam Speaker, I'd like to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. No further statements? Appointment of select committees. Instructions to select committees. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meeting. The chair recognizes.
Madam Speaker, wish to renew all notices in the name of the government.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Renew all notices in the name of the opposition.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Adjournment.
Madam Speaker, I now wish to move for adjournment to April 12th, 2023 at 10 a.m. April 12th.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, honorable members. It has been moved and seconded that the House do now adjourn to Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 at 10 a.m. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is carried. Final adjournment.
Madam Speaker, on the adjournment, just for the edification of members side opposite, with confirmation, we do intend to answer questions, and we will advise of the matter which we will debate upon return. But that is for the 12th of April, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, honorable members.
Madam Speaker, I now move that the House stands adjourned April 12th, 2023 at 10 a.m.
Thank you, honorable members. Is there a seconder? Thank you, honorable members. It has been moved and seconded that the House do now adjourn to Wednesday, April 12th, 2023 at 10 a.m. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those opposed will stand. The motion is agreed. The House stands adjourned to April 12th, 2023 at 10 a.m.
All right.